Welcome back to the podcast. Today, we've got life coach extraordinaire, Mary Beth Schroeder with us. She is the day one life coach, and we're going to get excited and really talk about recovery and emanating some great feelings. And Mary Beth, what do you got to say today?
The first thing I want to say, Anthony, is, the first time I got ordered to go to AA, and I'm hearing everybody talk about, I am an alcoholic. It was just so much against my spiritual beliefs, because I am is the most powerful sentence we can say. And anything we say after that, we're creating in our reality. And so I right away knew this is not going to work for me. And I came up with my own practices and spiritual recovery. And that's what I teach others, because it's the only thing that worked for me. Saying I am an alcoholic, I didn't want to keep recreating that reality. I wanted, to create an energetic shift, to the point where I am no longer that person who is going to order red wine for lunch, or even, mimosas for breakfast, and drink every day, and numb myself out, and we need to have that energetic shift to really change. So that's what I teach. And I'm not for everyone. A lot of people think I'm a little bit woo-woo, but
well, look, their whole practice is in not forgetting that they're an alcoholic, right? How many people have died, ended up in jail? They end up going back and relapsing. How many alcoholics have gone back out there and, that built-in forgetter forgets how bad it is. Oh, we get drunk, we, fall down, get all scratched up and all that good stuff. But then all of a sudden realize, oh, things are going pretty good. Life's good.
I can handle it. Yeah.
Yeah, I can handle it now. Maybe it's just a bad time. And I got this. I'm not alcoholic. I just was going through a rough time.
Yeah, because they didn't really have that shift in identity and that energy that I was just talking about. And that's called, those people. And that's what I used to do. I used to white knuckle it. Like, I would quit for some time. And then I'm like, I really wanted it. I really didn't have that change. So that's the dry drunk, right? Like, we really, really are just blocking ourselves from something we still want. And now I'm at the point, and what I teach others is we get ourselves to the point where we have that void filled through spiritual means. We have a purpose. So we no longer have that desire to have the drink. And that's the energetic shift that I'm talking about. And it's not overnight. In the beginning, we need to manage our emotions, manage all of these triggers and things, until we get to that point where we raise our vibration enough to where literally we are no longer that person. We are no longer an energetic match to alcohol, which is a low vibrational substance. So if you think about it, when you raise your energy, you raise your vibration, it no longer is a match for you. Literally, for me, the more I raise my vibration, this sounds crazy, but it's happened to other people, my body stopped tolerating the alcohol. I would start getting like rashes and like instant headaches. Like, as soon as I would drink it, my body was rejecting it because it no longer matched my frequency. Does that make sense?
No, look, the question is, when do we become alcoholic? Is it born? Are you born with alcoholism? Is it something that you've always got the behavior in you? The alcohol just sets it free. When does the alcoholic become an alcoholic?
I think a lot of it is to do with like trauma. Like, for me, definitely it was triggered in my childhood. I had a lot of childhood trauma, and it's interesting because all we're doing is seeking relief. Innately, we know we're supposed to wake up joyful. We know that innately, but we're not. And like, I had a lot of anxiety as a child because my parents divorced when I was 5 years old, and I started freaking out like, oh my gosh, if my dad can leave, my mom can leave too. And I got this abandonment wound, right? And I drank for the first time when I was 11 years old, and on a vacation with a friend and her family, and they were very lenient, and they left all this alcohol out on the counter, and we were just like, let's do it. We just made some concoctions, just mixing stuff together. And I can tell you, Anthony, I felt such relief of that anxiety for the first time in my life. And that's a red flag for us with the addictive personalities, and I do, to answer your question, I do think part of it's genetic, part of it's like we learn stuff from our conditioning through our families. So that's why a lot of what we think is genetic is actually learned behavior, because that's why it's within the family. I did have my dad's father, actually, I never met him because he died of cirrhosis of the liver when my mom was pregnant with me. So 50 years ago. And from what I found out, he was very abusive, and to my father. And so he had a lot of trauma, and, that stuff gets passed down. And, unfortunately, we're cycle breakers. That's what I'm doing, is I'm breaking that cycle. Sure, it's in me. And I think that I know that I have the addictive brain. I'm not a moderator. I don't have that stop button that other people have. And this self-awareness is so spiritual. We underestimate self-awareness as being probably the most spiritual thing out there, because I couldn't quit as long as I was in denial. Right. As long as I'm surrounding myself with everybody else who drinks as much or more than I did, and I'm in the corporate world at that time. And, it was so normal, so glamorized, right? Yeah. And I'm like, now I'm the big weirdo oddball who doesn't drink alcohol. And everyone's like, why aren't you drinking? We have a problem, And I'm like, well, why do you drink? We got to ask them, like, why do you need to drink to have fun? Just turn it back around on them. That's what I started doing.
No, that's so, a lot of us are born with that real uncomfortableness, right? That seeming that part of us that doesn't feel like we fit in. Yes. There's some awkwardness to it. I don't remember ever being pulled aside at school and talk about that. No one ever, they taught me about math. They taught me about English. They taught me about science, but no one ever said that the human condition is somewhat uncomfortable, that all of us have that, right? Some of us have it even more, especially when you come from families who really, who emulate that the world is wrong, the world is broken, that, and they really kind of, speak to that the world's broken. Of course, the relationships are broken. I should have a lot of fear about the world. It kind of makes it bigger. It makes it bigger, more fearful, right? And all of a sudden you get alcohol and you're like,
yeah, that relief. And again, like, it shouldn't be criminalized, in my opinion. That's all we're doing. We should be, you gave me full body goosebumps when you said that, because this stuff should be taught in school. We should be learning meditation and how to ground ourselves and how to raise our vibration and things like this. But we're taught stuff that we don't really end up using.
Well, I think that's one of the ones where we got to make this shift, especially in a time like now, where the Industrial Revolution is outdated, right? But most of school was really developed to create factory workers, right? People that could go to work in a factory, people that could work, could read and write, turn things on and off and follow a bell. There was a gift to that in creating an industrial revolution in our country. No doubt. We live in this amazing country. We've got lots of stuff, and that served that purpose, but it didn't, the stuff that we had as a community before that, those spiritual practices that the Native Americans have, our ancestors had, the stuff that where they were connected to their body and soul, the one that knew, the witch doctors and the from here, it looks a little awkward to look at those people, but there was a spiritual connection to their mind, body, soul that the Industrial Revolution kind of kicks out a little bit, right? Like that's not science. That stuff's hokey, right? But there was something there was a knowing in that way of being that you could literally feel as right.
Absolutely. And what I wish they taught too is like about energy and empaths, because a lot of addicts I know, we're so sensitive. I'm an empath, able to feel other people's feelings. I didn't know until my 40s that I was an empath, and started learning about it. A psychic, actually, several told me, you're an empath. You need to, protect your energy and stuff, because you're picking up all of these. And when I think about when I was a kid, I was always like, I would be able to feel the feelings of everyone around me. Like, my dad, people, grown adults, I'd be able to feel what they were feeling. And it's very confusing, because sometimes as a kid, you can be in a crowd and mistake those energies as your own. And it can be very overwhelming. And I think that's a lot of what I used alcohol for, is a self-medication from that. And so a lot of sensitive souls end up getting into addiction because we're trying to numb that away. We don't want to feel everybody's energy. So if that was taught in school, where we learned how to protect our energy and clear energy, because the energy is a very real thing, and it is scientific. Absolutely. And we can measure it now. We have the technology to measure these things. And it's not woo-woo, but people think it's woo-woo, so I go ahead and play along with it.
Well, science made it that way, right? Science made it that if I can't, if I can't put a chemical to it, and psychiatry and the medicine world really created that. If I can't fix it with a drug, it's got to be woo-woo. And you're like, maybe there's
quantum physics.
Right. Maybe no matter how much I've tried with drugs and drugs or medications, I never quite get there. It's like you talked about. There's something about learning about yourself
Mm-hmm.
right? Start to learn who you are and that it's okay to be uncomfortable. That, all right, I'm going to be uncomfortable. I'm not going to disappear. I'm not going to explode from this uncomfortableness. That human beings can go through that. Like nobody showed me how to practice that. Those feelings felt unwieldy, felt wrong. I felt sinful. I mean, look, I grew up with a Catholic home. When I had those thoughts and that behaviors, I thought that God was punishing me. Like, what kind of bad person are you? You're thinking about sex, or you're thinking about this, or or fear or anger. All that stuff was presented to me as wrong, and I'm like, today, those are just feelings that I go through. They don't necessarily dictate who I am. They're passengers on this vehicle, right? But they're not necessarily all who I am. But it takes, look, I think where you're at, what the practice that you're doing is really starting to bring to light. I think that that's the gift of where we are today, is that there's practitioners like you that are starting to really bring voices to what those feelings are. If the AA people have got, a great gift is in that, look, once we're sober, right? Once we get to sobriety, my belief is you start to feel those things, right? I mean, the gift of AA, I really do believe, is that it creates sobriety. Their method creates sobriety, and sober people start to find a spiritual path, right? Because it's a natural way of being, right? The real one is there's a spirit in us. And when I take off the alcohol and the pot smoking and all the stuff that I did that covered up that light in me, that the spirit starts to come alive, and you actually want to feel more of that, right? There's something feels really good about that light in you. That I can feel it in you when I talk to you. I can literally feel your light.
Yeah.
And there's a gift in that.
Thank you. Yeah. Brene Brown has a really beautiful saying. She says, you cannot selectively numb your feelings. And that means, like, yeah, we can numb out that negative shit, but we're also numbing the joy. We're also numbing all of these beautiful feelings and that connection with God that we're supposed to be feeling, the connection with spirit, whatever you want to call it. And it's very interesting that, we sit there and we think, well, we're numbing out, or we're filling a void with this stuff, but we're actually, removing ourselves from being our highest version of ourselves, because it's a distraction too, right? Like a lot of this stuff regarding self-awareness, as long as we keep ourselves distracted, even if it's just like our cell phones, scroll, like we do all the stuff that takes us away from our higher self, in my opinion. And to me, our intuition, which is, in my opinion, how our direct connection to God. And that's how because when I quiet my mind, when I meditate, which I didn't used to be able to, I thought I couldn't do it, because I've been diagnosed with ADHD, OCD, anxiety, and depression, like all of these things, but I'm not medicated. And I'm living proof that you can figure out how to manage your emotions. And I kind of wonder if ADHD is something where we created, it's for people who somehow subconsciously knew that school is a bunch of programming and I'm resisting it at some point. Like, I'm not taking this stuff in. This doesn't. So yeah. And also it's like, I see ADHD as a superpower personally. Like, I get so much stuff done. Reframing these labels, is just like the best thing you could do, because my ADHD makes me amazing at a lot of things. I have a sense of urgency like nobody else has. When I'm really focused on something that I love, something I'm passionate about, I've got focus like you wouldn't believe, and I'm not taking anything.
I feel you there. I was diagnosed. Well, first of all, I got to go on ADHD because, look, I went to my doctor, and in a 15-minute conversation, I talked to him to give me Adderall.
Yeah.
Now, it wasn't that I had ADHD. I was just at a party one night and someone gave me an Adderall. I'm like, these are awesome. This is like cocaine without the paranoia. Like, I could talk all night. I was like 25. I started taking them at work. I'm like, by that point I was in my, late 30s, early 40s. And all of a sudden taking this ADHD medicine, I could work all day and then I could party all night. And, like, this stuff was great. I'm like, how did you get this stuff? Yeah. And my friend's like, well, here's what you do. You got to go to your doctor's office and you got to tell them these things. Tell them you leave things open on your desk and tell them this and tell them that. I was in and out of my doctor's office with a sample prescription in under 15 minutes, a class 1 drug. And I think to myself, boy, what a desire our medical world has got to solve things with things, right? Instead of really looking at, all right, Anthony, what are the behaviors? What are you doing? And let's find let's try to solve this without a medication. Let's go do some practices that slow you down. Maybe let's do some practices, right? But that takes some work from a doctor. We have to follow up, and you got to track you, and you got to talk about the, steps to get you there, right? There becomes this, that's more work than just going, here, take this, you're out in 15 minutes and boom, I get to check off another patient.
Well, that's not how they're trained. They're not trained to find the root cause. They're trained to do the standard of care. And that is prescribing something to cover up symptoms instead of really figuring out what's going on beneath the surface. And that's funny because you reminded me of my friend. She had gone through this horrible breakup. A boyfriend she'd been with for like 6 years, and they lived together. And she was really upset, but she was at the doctor and she started crying, and he was like, "What's wrong?" And she had, "I'm really upset. I broke up with my boyfriend." And he's like you said, "Well, I'm going to give you an antidepressant." We're supposed to be sad when something sad happens. We're supposed to have feelings. Like, we are spiritual beings, but we're here having a human experience, and don't forget to be human. There's nothing wrong. Even though I teach law of attraction, I am not a positive vibes only person. Like, those people I would stay away from, because we are supposed to feel those feelings. They are guidance for us. We are not supposed to suppress them and push them down, because they stay in our body and they come out in other ways. They come out as compulsive behaviors and triggers. And we're taught to deny our feelings, especially men. Like, it's really awful for men. And I feel horrible about it, because I've always kind of been allowed to show my feelings, but with men, you're taught that it's weak and to be vulnerable. And to me, being vulnerable is a strength. And anyone who thinks it's not, I just think they're an emotionally immature person. If it's a woman, and I'm not saying women don't do that. I help people with their relationships all the time, and I hear about it. I know some women can't tolerate a man being vulnerable, but that's work they need to do on themselves. That's an emotionally immature woman. She's not healthy within herself if she sees vulnerability as a weakness.
No, we were not trained on this, right? Now, some of us are doing the work, right? And I'm not judging those who aren't, right? Just, I feel sad for the folks that get stuck in a space where they haven't got to go through a practice of that vulnerability, looking inside, looking at it and going, all right, how could maybe this not be a behavior? First of all, how could it be the thoughts, actions, behavior that I'm living are causing the feelings I'm having? And, right now I'm going through a fun little time where, there's a lot going on in the work world. And I just noticed that I'm bottling up a lot of those things. And here, my body's starting to really do it. How I manifest stress is in my gut. Right. It's really a gut level. And all of a sudden I've got these hernias that are popping up, and I'm like, how could your body be telling you that you're just something going on there? And I start to look at, all right, what do I need to do to address that? Right. How can I look at how am I holding stress? What are some of the practices? In the last 3 weeks, I've done more meditation than I've done in my entire life. Right. These practices of really stepping up my meditation game, trying to find some spots where I can really find look, that's not because I was some meditating guy. I literally have people around me who are saying, hey, let's try this on, right? Yeah. Today I have friends who don't facilitate stuffing them down with booze, right? Today I have men around my life who are trying to emulate other spiritual practices that just might be healthier, right? Yeah. And not that they're perfect, or not that they're the solve of everything out there. I do think we keep evolving and learning, right? But today that feels like the kind of men I want to be around.
Yes.
Right. And that becomes, not just men. I'm sorry. I happen to do a lot of practice in men's groups. So it's kind of safer environment where men can be vulnerable.
Yeah.
But it feels like a real healthy space to be the kind of practice that I want us all to have.
Absolutely. I think it's really important, and to use those emotions as guidance. And what you were saying earlier is about your body telling you. Our bodies are basically, look at them as your subconscious mind. They are telling us things that our conscious mind might not be able to acknowledge yet, is the best way of saying it. Like, my body started to tell me, like, it's like our intuition. My body started to tell me, like, when somebody's not good for me. So in dating, like there was a guy, this was about 3 years ago. And every time I was around him, I would get nauseous. And he was like, I thought he was a great guy. He was doing everything right, saying everything right. And I was like, why am I so nauseous? And I was like, maybe I got COVID. You just tell yourself these things, but it was only around him. Like as soon as I'm away from him, I'm feeling good. And then I found out a bunch of stories about him later where he was this, abusive man. And I ended up meeting one of his exes. And so I'm like, thank you, body. Our bodies are telling us, those feelings are telling us like what is good for you and who is not good for you. And listen to it. It's quite literally your intuition.
But we're not trained on that. But listen, Mary Beth, that's not what we're trained on. You can't do that. You're not a doctor. You can't. Mary Beth, what kind of nonsense is this? You're not allowed to say that. You're not a doctor.
I got autoimmune. I was having autoimmune symptoms, and like my body was like blowing up. And my mom had been diagnosed with blood cancer. This was about a little over 3 years ago, and she ultimately died on Christmas Day. And it was so stressful, the whole taking care of her towards the end. Luckily, it was only 6 months. A lot of people suffer a lot longer than that. And then Christmas Day was when she died. And that's when my body started blowing up and all these things going wrong. Well, that was me trying to the stress, right? Like we have these stressors and we have these things like that. I went to doctor after doctor after doctor after doctor. This is my point. Nobody could figure anything out. I was developing skin rash. My face, I'd wake up one morning and this was my body telling me. Now, it sounds crazy, but a psychic ends up being the one. Like after all these doctors I saw for, 3 years of doctors just giving me prescriptions and me not taking them. But, they give them to me. I'm like, okay, a psychic ends up telling me what's going on and gave me some practices to do. And there were some other things that I was actually eating, some food allergies that I had. Ooh. Everything that he told me, I eliminated. And I'm like, everything stopped. And this autoimmune I was diagnosed with, supposed to be not reversible, but I reversed it. So I'm not a doctor, but I seem to have been able to figure stuff out that the doctors I saw couldn't figure out. I don't think that doctors are trained in, number one, nutrition. Not one of them said anything about food. They're not trained on it. If they're honest with you, they'll tell you maybe they had a semester with a little bit, and I'm not even sure that information they were taught was correct.
Well, it's not in a medical book to sit there and look at to look at what you're eating or the workout. I always had to wonder what would it be like if you could say to an alcoholic, let's just try this, right? Let's start with stop the drinking, whatever method you use. If it's your method or the AA method or sitting on a mountaintop eating mint leaves, whatever it is to get you from here to stop the drinking, right? Because as long as you're drinking, there's really no getting to it. There is no really getting in tune with anything. It's just, it's a shit show, right? Just the drinking blows any opportunity of any real feelings or any real sensitivities or really being aware of your body. I think it's an automatic shutdown. I've never seen anybody get, greatly spiritual in, drinking and drug behavior. I haven't seen it.
It blocks it.
Yeah, it's toxic, right? It's literally, if you're an alien looking at us, they're like, look at those little people down there. They're literally drinking ethyl alcohol, which is poison, to somewhat make themselves just dizzy enough that they're poisoning themselves just enough to be dizzy, right? To check out of a behavior, to feel what they think is good for a moment. And, it just doesn't last, right? No matter how many times you do it. It used to be
relief, right? In the beginning, it is relief.
Yeah.
And then it turns on you at some point. Like I'm going to say in my 40s is when it got really bad to where there's a saying, drinking alcohol is like pouring gasoline on anxiety. And so what used to fix my anxiety was causing outrageous anxiety.
Right.
And I would be up in the middle of the night and I didn't know the science behind it. Actually, when I became a coach, I wasn't an addiction recovery coach at first. I was helping people with other things. And I'm like, I'm going to add on a niche. I'm going to add on addiction recovery. I'm going to help other people. I was still in denial because like you said earlier, everyone around me was drinking all the time as much or more. So I couldn't recognize it. We can't heal anything that we don't recognize and acknowledge. And so I start learning about addiction and learning about what alcohol really does. And I discovered this is what's screwing up my sleep, because the science behind it is that, alcohol is a depressant, as we all know. We were all taught that in health class. Yep. And what our body does, the correct thing for our body to do is to create stimulants that counteract that depressant. So then that after about maybe 4 hours after our last drink, where the depressant wears off and all we're left is the stimulants. So I would start waking up in the middle of the night, and I'm blaming my hormones for everything. This must be hormones. Waking up with this anxiety in the middle of the night. I didn't even do anything bad, but I felt like, oh my God. And I just couldn't get back to sleep. And that's because your body starts to create the amount of stimulants. Even if I only had 1 or 2 drinks, which was rare because I usually had more, but even if I only had 1 or 2 glasses of wine, my body created the amount of stimulants of my normal, which would be maybe a bottle and a half of wine. And I'm only 5 feet tall, 100 pounds. I was feeling it, a bottle and a half of red wine, that was my vice, red wine. And the one red flag, one thing when I turned the corner was I actually had overdone it another night. I try to moderate. Sometimes I could moderate 20 times in a row, Anthony. And then that 21st time, I'm going to get hammered and screw it up and end up with a hangover.
What was your most embarrassing night?
Well, first I'll tell you about the morning, because I had overdone it. I had a client that morning and I was like, oh my God. And I knew, like we've all figured out as drinkers, unhealthy drinkers, the hair of the dog that bit you. So I went to the freaking store and bought 2 bottles of red wine, but I bought gift bags also, because I'm like trying to look like, oh, I'm going to party later. And I was just so shameful. And that's what keeps us in that cycle, that shame and that guilt. Those are very low vibrational feelings. And but they're there for a reason, as guidance. Like, you did something and I was just so mad at myself. But yeah, I drank wine that morning and definitely it was a low point. And that's when I was like, I have to, this is wrong. It was a wake up call, more so than that DUI I got.
Yeah. There was times when I sometimes wonder how much of it also was with withdrawal, right? Like, there's 2 kind of things that were kind of happening at the same time. One, the cap on my feelings, as I got sober, whatever it was I was pushing down, call it a sewer cap on the garbage I'm trying to cover up. That starts to open up as I get sober. I start to feel whatever I was pushing down. Hey, I've been cheating, or hey, I've been doing this, or hey, I didn't show up at home, or hey, I came home at 3 a.m, or hey, whatever the shame behavior I was doing when I was drinking, right? That the drink kind of put that, sewer cap on there. And as I got sober, that cap started to come off and I started to feel those. But at the same time, I'm also going through withdrawals. I mean, just the massive amounts of sugar in the booze, right? Just the massive amount of, something I didn't even realize I was literally in withdrawals.
That's exactly what it is. That's what I call anxiety. Like I was shaking that morning. Like I had to get something. I was not going to be okay. Or what I should have done is canceled my appointment, but that's not what I did, because I didn't want to feel that way. Yeah. And once we learned, oh my gosh, I can just drink alcohol and this will go away really quick. That was the choice that I made, but I did feel such guilt and shame that it's so embarrassing. That's just a low moment where I'm over here trying to teach people how to live their best lives, and look at me. What am I doing? So that was the turning point for me, because I am someone who I have to live in integrity. I couldn't do that. I can't say one thing and do another. And that was like when I really recognized, as soon as I recognized I had that problem, I no longer had inner peace with doing it again. And that was the shift. That was when I was like, okay, we're going to start doing all the stuff that I've been doing. I've been studying law of attraction since 2006, and we're 2025. So this isn't new to me. The more I learned, the more I realized I am literally self-sabotaging every single day of my life. I'm putting myself in a lower vibration, and I just knew I can't do this anymore. I'm going against what I teach. So yeah, that integrity was a huge part of it. It's been only 5.5 years since I completely quit drinking alcohol. I was teaching people other things, not because again, I didn't have a problem. So
that's awesome. So let's talk a little bit about your daily practices. With the AA folks, they've got, go to meetings, talk to other alcoholics, work the steps. They have this kind of practice that keeps them in a kind of a ritual that is a constant reminder of, if I don't start to switch my behaviors, the old behaviors will show back up. What are the practices that you do that really start to create and fill in that hole you were talking about? That because if I quit drinking, now I'm just left with a big hole and this empty wound, right? Now I got to fill that with some good stuff. And there are look, even alcoholic has some good days, right? I mean, I just can't be sober and miserable.
No, I love that question. I'm glad you asked because it is. And it's so important to know this. This is daily stuff we're talking about. You can't, you really have to work on your vibration and set yourself up for success every single day. Just like if I go to the gym and I'm getting like, oh, okay, now I got my perfect body, I'm done. Oh, hell no. This is something you have to work at every single day of your life. And it sounds like, oh my gosh, that's overwhelming. But truthfully, it just becomes your new normal. It really becomes just your natural. And so my son, one time I remember I was still drinking and he was like, Mom, put yourself to bed. And I was like, what? I'm like, my kid, he's 22 now, but this is a long time ago. He's like telling me to put myself to bed was exactly what I needed to hear because I was keeping myself, I could stay up late. Like alcohol gave me energy. A lot of people, So and that's
first one in, last one out.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not sure.
I was a leader.
Yeah. Was it the sugar? Was it the wanting more? I'm not sure which one was the driver, but it's funny
the dopamine. It's the way our brains are handling the dopamine. We get more pleasure than other people do from those things. And so to answer your question before, I became a gym rat. That's what I did initially. I overdid it. And since I've got that addictive personality, like instead of going to happy hour, it was at the gym. And then I kind of overdid it for some time. Now I'm more balanced with the gym stuff. I incorporated meditation. I listened to positive, uplifting podcasts like yours, things that we feed ourselves. I lost a lot of my friends. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
But I gained a lot of new friends with healthier habits and we do volunteer work. Serving others is huge. I mean, and that's an AA concept too, right? You're helping other people. Although I didn't go to AA other than those times I was ordered, there are certain things that I have incorporated that are in alignment with those teachings. And I'm a big whatever works person. I think whatever is in your toolbox that works for you, keep doing it. And so, just setting yourself up daily by getting enough sleep, things that are going to raise your vibration. It's going to be different for you than it is for me. Like sometimes for people, they can just put a song on that raises their vibration. And I'm a big fan of Abraham Hicks. I'm not sure if you've heard of Abraham Hicks. I would put that on a lot to raise my vibration. Yeah. And because every time I listen, I'm like a different person, and it's most of it, I've been listening for almost 20 years now. Most of it is stuff I already know. But we all need these reminders and we all need that little vibrational lift, and so breath work is huge for me. That's how I started because of my monkey mind. Breath work is something that I recommend to people who have the ADHD type brain, because meditation doesn't have to be zero empty thoughts in your head. That really is a disservice to people to believe that, because everyone's going to have these thoughts drift in and out. What it really is about focusing on one thing. And that one thing for me is my breath. And, box breathing is the easiest one for people. You breathe in for 4, hold it for 4, breathe out for 4. That's a real easy one to remember. And it's a real quick turnaround if you're having anxiety too. Or the 5-7-8 method is another one, which it's what we're doing is we're focusing on counting and focusing on our breath. It gets us out of our head, right? So breath work is a great meditation. Eating healthy. The more that we do things, we put things in our body that are going to, be good for us, the more we raise our vibration. And I know people get so mad at me when I say this, but this has happened to me and it's happened to a lot of my clients. These addictions start to fall away because, like I said earlier, they're no longer a match to your frequency. You feel so good that void is gone. You're doing other things. You always have to replace your bad habits, because what do? We have a lot of time on our hands when we quit drinking. You're like, what am I going to do? Go paint the mailbox? You have all this time that you used to waste. And I think it's just catching yourself a lot over and over with these distractions and trying to do the shadow work that we all want to avoid, which is basically just accepting these things that we've been rejecting in ourselves. That's part of the shadow work. And we really have to address the stuff and loving even those things that, we thought were unlovable in ourselves.
I mean, the shadow work, Carl Jung talks about, our shadows, and I don't know that they ever go away. I think his whole mentality was, look, at least I can get them around front of me and I can see them, right? That one inside of me that, is the malevolent one, the one that's kind of, I'm not sure they completely ever go away. And I can relate to that. I think they're there. I think the best I can do is just be aware when they're in action, right? When they're, that's my shadow talking, right? That's
we learn to love it and embrace it, accept it at least.
Yeah.
And
just don't deny it's there. I mean, like the one to me that gets scared and goes, that person's da, da, da. And then, there's some great, the antidote to that to me has always been, what if I think of what if the opposite of that could be true?
Yeah.
What if the opposite of what my shadow could be thinking could be true? What if that person's, completely living their life the way they need to live their life to support themselves, and whatever I'm making up about them is completely just my shadow trying to sabotage a thought. And I'm not sure why it does it. I never quite understand the one inside of us that makes, I've named that voice.
Yeah.
I've named him Fred. And Fred's kind of a jackass, right? Fred makes up these stories about people and says things about things, and has these whole ways of being about himself. And every once in a while I got to look at Fred and go, just shut up. Look, it's when I can recognize that, right? When I can really recognize that that's just Fred up there talking, right? That voice in my head that maybe for thousands of years has kept us from dying, right? Maybe it's the one that says, don't go over to that new bush. There could be snakes in it. Maybe it's the one inside of us that says, do what you normally do. Don't try something new, right? The one that's afraid of that. Maybe there was some gift in that way of being prehistorically, but today, some of that's not needed. Some of that stuff actually is getting in my way. And so I want to talk a little bit about, now you're sober and you're working on the one inside of you, the creator in you, that light in you, the one that's, really starting to have a life adventure. What are the things how do you keep doing that? Because I know there's a propensity for me that, I do some work and then I go backwards, and I'll do some work. It's kind of like the gym, right? There's periods of my life when I'm rocking in the gym.
Yeah.
And then there's periods where I'm not. And I feel like spiritual growth and the vibrational growth, to continue to do that, there's a skill in not just doing it, but continuing to do it.
Yeah.
Right?
I always tell people, it's not about motivation, man. It's not like nobody is ever always motivated. Olympic athletes aren't always motivated, but it's discipline and commitment is what we have to rely on. I'm not always motivated, but I just do it anyway, because I know that's what I have to do in order to keep my vibration high. And the good news is once we raise our vibrational set point, we're going to dip down. It's human. I'm not trigger free, by the way. And like you were talking about the ego. I mean, I think our ego's there to keep us safe, right? But we need to recognize, like you were saying, this is, Fred, is kind of an asshole sometimes, but Fred's there to keep you safe, and it's not who you really are. And it's important for people to recognize that, the roommate, as Michael Singer called it, the roommate in our head, it's not us. And so to separate yourself from that and learn that we can be the master. And what is it trying to teach us? Managing our emotions and managing the stuff. And like, I love triggers these days, because I'm like, ooh, this is something new I get to heal. Cause I thought that I had already healed this, but here I am triggered by it. It's just reframing it, kind of like you said.
That's awesome. So let's talk a little bit about your cards and the daily practice that the cards are and how they work in your life and your clients' lives.
So I was already sober when I made these cards, addiction recovery with the law of attraction. I was actually out walking my dog, and it was a beautiful sunny day, and my mind was quiet, which like quiet, no chatter, which was rare. and I got this download to make these cards. Like, and that's like something that should motivate people to meditate, because anytime you meditate and you get this, get rid of distractions, that's when you're going to be open to receive these downloads, these, ideas and inspiration and things like that. So basically every single card, there's 44 cards in the deck. You pick one each morning. Some people pick a card and they keep at the same one until they master that particular thing. It teaches you law of attraction. There's a lot of misinformation about law of attraction out there. It makes me cringe when I see this stuff on social media. So it teaches law of attraction the correct way. And then it also is going to give you something to work on for that day, something to focus on. So in a way, it's kind of a little bit like AA, like it gives you a focus for the day, and teaches you the law of attraction. And as long as you're doing that, it helps raise your vibration. And like I said, the whole point of these cards, it's all the techniques that I used to quit my addictions. I also had food addiction, by the way, relationship, and sex addiction, like I feel like I want everything good, like I said, I'm not I'm not good at moderation.
All the above feel good, right? Look, to eat and that filling feeling, right? Sex, to be in the lover's hands, the place where you just feel so loving. And there's something, I fundamentally believe that we come from, we come from a place where we were together. I was in Nepal about a year and a half ago, and I spent some time with these monks, and I really end up in a space where I end up having this spiritual experience where I see God as being here forever. And, try to imagine what forever is, right? Just for a second, try to imagine that. And in that moment, I got this feeling that God created this playground called Earth, and we made this little vehicle called the human. And it's just, it's the first time where we ever were separated from the total part of us, right? Where a part of that being called God is in each and every one of us. I could see these little monks. I don't know, like you talk about that little spiritual download that was kind of put in there. I don't even know where that thought came from, but I could see these little men bowing to each other. And I could literally see the God in each one of them bowing to each other, the God in them bowing to God in me. And in that moment, it was like clear as day. I could see that, right? And I could really see that one of us that is here to have this physical experience, that we are these amazing creators, that the thoughts, actions, and addictions and fears are the things that get in our way, right? I could like see it.
We disconnect ourselves.
Yeah, that's right. Right. That animal vehicle takes over a little bit, and we disconnect from that. And maybe, the spirits, create. Maybe it needs a little rest, and maybe that's why we slow it down. I'm not quite sure why we do it, but, I could see it in that moment. So I asked, let's go through that practice. Do you have a card handy? Can we look at a card and talk about one?
Sure. Pick one out.
So open up one and just
let's do it. See what comes out.
Yeah. See what happens. Like,
I need to put my glasses on. Because I actually have, you've probably seen cards before, and they have a booklet with them. I didn't really like the booklet, so I put all the information on the back of the card.
I just like it your way. I like you have a gift.
Let go of the past. At the bottom says, I'm going to put my glasses on because I'm 50. The bottom says, release what cannot be changed. And there's always a picture on the front. And this is a woman letting go of balloons. And people do that in grief groups a lot. So that's where I got that idea. I hired an artist. Mine would have been stick figures if I had drew these myself. So want me to read the back for you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Go for it.
This card signifies that you need to let go of things you cannot control so that you can make room for new and exciting experiences. Progress is not possible without change. And this card suggests that playing the negative loop from your past has been impeding your growth. It indicates the need to let go of resentments and forgive yourself and others for things that cannot be changed. You have been holding on to aspects of your life that are not working for you. Your past has played a huge role with your addiction, and these patterns will repeat unless you let go of these old ideas and beliefs. Letting go means to release whatever is keeping you from true happiness. Your mind does not like change. It prefers familiarity, even when it is painful. Today, you will begin to make the unfamiliar more familiar. Start by making an announcement that you are releasing your need to control family, friends, partners, and even work associates. Declare that you are releasing others' opinions of you. That's a hard one. Releasing others' opinions.
That's a tough one. I want to be liked. I want to be liked, and not being liked is a tough
That's our
one,
ego again, right?
Oh,
That's
yeah,
Fred.
That's like Fred, right?
Proclaim that beginning now, you will stop taking things personally and will no longer be easily offended. You do have control over these reactions when you are mindful of them. Finally, affirm that you now release the energy of the past, which includes negative energy from former relationships that were emotionally or physically abusive. Imagine you are tearing up the soul contract between yourself and anything toxic and release it with love and appreciation for the lessons. As you liberate yourself and others from judgment, you are creating the space and mindset which will allow joy and abundance to flow into your life. Some may experience an immediate paradigm shift and may be able to forgive immediately. For others, it takes months or even years. Unfortunately, some may never forgive. The important thing to realize is that you pick this card because it reveals that it is time to at least begin the process of releasing the past so you can make room for your wonderful future. So each card is going to have a different theme and things that I went through my spiritual recovery practice.
Well, Mary Beth Schroeder, I am grateful for the gift that you are in this world, the work that you're doing with people. If people want to have you come be their life coach, if they want to connect with you, what's the best place for them to catch up and connect with you?
My website is day1lifecoaching.com, DAYONE, lifecoaching.com. And I offer a free 20-minute Zoom call with me, personally, one-on-one. That way you can see, you can tell me a little about your story. I can tell you about how I work. We could see, are we a match? Because I'm definitely not a match for everyone. And if I'm not a match for you, I will be honest, and I will be able to guide you probably to somebody. I have a lot of connections. I'll be able to guide you to something that's a better match for whatever your goals are, whatever you're dealing with.
That's awesome. Look, it's such a gift to find a coach. And like you said, each coach is a little different. They're kind of like music, right? Each one rings in your ear a little different. But I got to tell you, the time I spent with you, you have a wonderful light. You shine brightly on this planet. People would be honored to be there. By the way, I think you said that you're going to give us, put a little discount. We're going to offer our audience a little discount for those cards. Yeah,
I'll do $10 off of the cards. And what would you like me to use as a coupon code?
Why don't we call it Future Factory? And we call it Future Factory Podcast or Future Factory as a coupon code. And that'll be at the website. So we'll just put in a coupon code Future Factory, and we'll put all that down below. We'll put a link to that down in the description. So audience members, if you'd like to go get that, and please do. Here, I encourage you to go try this on as a practice. Here, I'm going to take it on and try it as a practice. And I love when we have great visual tools like this to bring on a practice of consciousness. So, Mary Beth, I'm so grateful for you and the work that you're doing.
Thank you. I appreciate you so much. Thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, I had to have you on again. It's been a lot of fun. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, audience members, last week we had another breakthrough week. We had 62,000 people that are subscribed on YouTube now. It's unbelievable. I was like, holy cow. That is just blowing me away. The numbers that you guys continue to grow. I'm glad you're here. I would like to, but we noticed that last week a lot of people make it to the end of a podcast and you weren't subscribers yet. If you could take a second and go do that now, it makes a world of difference to Alyssa and Joe and all of the team members that work tirelessly to find great guests like Mary Beth to come on this podcast. The work that we do to, shine bright lights on great ideas out there. So if you could do that now, I would be so grateful. And as always, thanks for listening.